Hey, everybody. Hey, and welcome to Career Expert Roundtable. I am Bill, the company's expert, and with me today, we have Ben from Ben Talks Talent. Hello, Ben. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, this is awesome. Now, for those of you who are watching this on my channel, if you haven't checked out Ben's channel, go and check out Ben's channel. Don't leave now, but as soon as you get off this live stream, go and check out Ben's channel. It's called Ben Talks Talent Interview Advice, and you'll find a lot of really awesome videos there from a recruiter's perspective, giving you the story of what's going on the other side of the table when you apply for a job, how the recruiters think, how they react, how they make their decisions, a lot of stuff like that. So check out Ben's channel. A lot of great stuff. And Ben is a practicing recruiter who has a lot of insight into how recruiters think and act and all this kind of stuff. So we are going to talk today about interview preparation using ChatGPT. So if you are wanting to prepare for an interview, we are going to give you hopefully some useful tips and tricks that will be able to make you far more effective in doing that. So I'd like to hand this off to Ben. Interview preparation using ChatGPT. Where do we start on that topic?
Yeah, and so first, I just want to say to your audience, if you have never used ChatGPT before, this is your exposure to it. This is like kind of the beginning for you. It probably seems really intimidating. I just have to say, give it 5 minutes. Actually, go to the website, check it out, and you will find that it's so much easier and more approachable than you might be seeing. Now, if you've already used ChatGPT, I'm going to talk about some of the ways I feel you can use it as a candidate to help you in your job search. The way I look at it is I kind of break it down into 3 different ways. The first way is things you can do prior to actually getting an interview. The second way that I think you can use ChatGPT is when you're a candidate. You have an interview scheduled. It is coming up. What can you do to position yourself to be the best candidate possible, increase the likelihood of you getting a job offer? That's the second thing. And then post-interview, there's actually things you can use ChatGPT for that I think are also helpful. So I think there's a lot of different things I want to talk about. So Bill, I guess the first thing I would like to talk about is how do you use it prior to having an interview? And I think there's a few things that I would recommend. So first things first, I'm a huge advocate on making sure your LinkedIn is a great billboard for you as a candidate. It is a powerful tool. Recruiters use it every single day to reach out to people, to introduce opportunities to them. Some opportunities that aren't even posted, the hidden job market. There's actually a way that you can do that. And ChatGPT is actually incredibly powerful for optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So I think I'd love to start there.
I think that's a great idea. Actually, I'm actually interested in what you have to say next. I'm interested to hear what comes out of your mouth, because that's something that an area that I'm more tuned into, like the hidden job market and doing it kind of informally. So fire away.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I would want to do is you can actually go to ChatGPT and you can type in the bar and start getting suggestions and start getting information. You can say to ChatGPT, "Hi, ChatGPT, I am a software engineer in this industry. Can you create a list of keywords that I should have included in the About Me section of my LinkedIn profile?" And it'll actually include, and it'll make you bullet points, all these different keywords that you should have in your About Me section in your LinkedIn profile. The reason why this is important is because recruiters are actually going to use the search functionality of LinkedIn to find you and ultimately bring jobs to you. They will also use it once you apply to the job and they determine, yes, I want to interview this person, to get an idea of, hey, what does this person bring to the table? What does their background look like? I think in the past, when people would apply to a job, you might go and look up their LinkedIn their Facebook profile, and you might look at a person and try to do some research that way as a recruiter. Today, when someone applies to a job, the first thing you do is you go look at their LinkedIn profile. So it is essentially replace the cover letter, because people are going to go and they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile. So once you get those keywords that you want to have so that people can actually find you, the next thing that I think is really important is you can say, okay, this is my current title. This is where I work now. Could you write a description of about me for my about me section, incorporating some of these keywords? From there, it's going to write out a paragraph or so.
I just want to say that that's interesting because it's a solution to a dilemma that a lot of job seekers have, which is that if you are applying for a specific job, it's the common knowledge that you would want to tailor your resume and your application to the keywords and to the things that they're looking for that specific job. But if you have something general like your LinkedIn profile, it's not used to be tailored to a specific job. It's there just as a sort of general billboard advertisement for you. And that could be for many different types of jobs or many different jobs from different companies that have different keywords and different things they're looking for. So the question that a lot of people have is like, what should I put on my LinkedIn profile that will be a good sort of one size fits all for any opportunities that could come my way? So it's great. And you're basically advocating for ChatGPT, who understands the almost like the ranking of search terms, like across an industry or something. It knows that, and it can also look at what you have on your profile. So it could be in a position to best tell you, well, in your situation, considering what's out there and what's popular right now and what people are looking for, you should maybe include these words and include this type of content that would bring opportunities to you in general. I think that's a great use of that. Yeah. So I'll let you get back to it, but I just wanted to chime in and say that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I totally agree with you. It's a great catch-all billboard for what you bring to the table. Your LinkedIn profile isn't a legal document. It isn't a legal place to show every job you've had, and it isn't supposed to chronicle it. It is an advertisement to the world of people who might hire you. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's why I'm someone you should definitely engage with. Now, resumes, you definitely want to cater. If you can cater and be specific, it absolutely behooves you to do so. But this is more general, and you just want people to do that and take a look and be interested in what you bring to the table. So one of the most powerful things about ChatGPT is its ability to respond to your prompts. So a prompt is basically what you put in that bar saying, can you give me this? Or, give me 50 interview questions that, I might get asked in an interview like this, right? So those prompts are really powerful. So when you ask it to write your About Me section, and if you don't love it, you can actually modify it. You can say something like, make that one paragraph instead of two. It could say, write this as if I was a people manager as opposed to an individual contributor.
That's a good tip.
You could say, that's a huge one. If you're in a technical role, you could say, I specifically work with these languages, so make sure you incorporate some of that into it. So you can just keep giving it suggestions or commands, and it'll modify it, and it does it instantly.
Okay, well, here's a question for you on that note. Okay, now let's say, look, we all have weak areas. Okay, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So let's pretend that you were a professional in a certain industry, and it's generally understood that you need a collection of different traits and things. You would need some people skills, some technical skills, maybe a couple of accomplishments, maybe things that show that you're trainable, maybe things that show that you have like a sort of depth skill set in one area, and maybe something that shows you're adaptable or something like this. There's a collection of things. Now let's pretend that you've identified a weakness where you say, like, I've got the technical skills, but I know that my weak area is, say, communication skills. When people meet me, that might be their concern. When they look at my resume, they see a lot of technical work, but not a lot of collaboration or leading teams. So would you recommend, when you're creating your LinkedIn profile, when you're doing what you were describing, like creating the About Me section or your bio or whatever, would you do it where you ask ChatGPT to say, can you punch up my skills in the communication or collaboration area and write it from that perspective? So it sort of tries to prop up maybe a perceived weakness. Or would you do the opposite, where you say, I want you to emphasize my strength because that's my main selling point. Make sure that that's front and center and people really understand the value I deliver in that area. What approach would you take, if any?
Yeah, Bill, that's a really great question. I feel like that is a fundamental question in the sense that, like, remove ChatGPT as a candidate. Do you want to fluff up parts of your background that maybe aren't your strengths to position yourself as someone who can be effective in that arena, or do you want to play to your strengths? I'm always a play to your strength person. So for me, no matter what ChatGPT puts there, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with it and it's accurate and an accurate reflection of your strengths from my perspective. So I would probably be more of the person to highlight that. And if you know that is a significant barrier to career success moving forward, it's something I'd be intentional about working on. But the last thing you want to do is,
that makes sense,
in your interview, like them say, okay, well, let's talk about, this specific thing. And then you find yourself really uncomfortable. You find yourself feeling like you can't effectively navigate the interview now because you don't feel comfortable in that area. You don't feel confident there and you're not as effective. That's my perspective. Maybe other people have different ones, but
it makes a lot of sense.
I don't want to catch up with me.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but like that makes sense as a general rule. You want to illustrate your main, what do you call it? Like your main value proposition and what you bring to the table, right? I imagine for any weak area, the goal is just to kind of convince people that it's not going to be an issue, but that's not really my core competency. As long as it's not going to be an issue, that's fine. We understand that my core competency is this, and that's my selling point. So that makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So you were in the middle of a great sort of piece of advice about how to use ChatGPT to tailor your LinkedIn profile. I don't want to take away from that if you had more in that area, because I found it fascinating.
No, I think that's good. I mean, you get the suggestions here, right? You could say, after you do that, you could prompt ChatGPT to say, hey, now write me an eye-catching subject or headline for my LinkedIn profile based on this about me summary, right? You could totally do that. And you could ask it to optimize some of your history. So when you're looking at the jobs you've had in the past, you can say, okay, I worked this job for this company and my main duties were this, this, and this. Could you write that, SEO rich as for my time there? So you could have it just redo the entire thing. I just think it's really important that you make sure that recruiters can find their way to your profile. I think those are the key things. Beyond that,
and that being keywords. So that's the obvious. Yes. So SEO driven keywords are the way that recruiters are going to find you, because you will pop up on searches, and that's how they're going to discover you. That's the discoverability component.
Yeah. And it's key. And if you're a professional, you should have a LinkedIn, in my opinion. And if you're going to have a LinkedIn, you want it to work for you and you want it to be optimized. And ChatGPT can do that for you so easily. So I'm a huge proponent of using it.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So we talked about sort of using ChatGPT in connection with your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
When it comes to interview preparation, I guess at this point, someone's resume is complete. You've already completed your resume. You've already sent it in, and now you are preparing for the interview. So when it comes to preparing for an interview, perhaps in the area of like anticipating questions or helping you with the answers or what to disclose and possibly what not to disclose, would you use ChatGPT for any of that type of activity?
Yeah. And here's where it gets really fun. I do some, like on my channel, I do some work about, your LinkedIn profile and resume, but I really like to focus on the actual interview prep and nailing your interview. I think that's a huge differentiator. I think it's an advantage we can give ourselves. So one of the things that I love doing is I love giving the advice that what you do is you take parts of the job description and you plop it into ChatGPT, right? And you could put in there like the must-haves or the daily responsibilities for the job that you're going to be interviewing for, and say, ChatGPT, these are the must-haves for a job that I'm interviewing with. Please create behavioral interview questions based on these responsibilities. And you hit enter. And it will literally pop out 2 to 3 behavioral interview questions for every single bullet on the job description. That could be the must-haves, the nice-to-haves, what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And to me, this is where it gets really powerful. I think behavioral interview questions are some of the hardest to answer interview questions because you don't know what they are. And you have to access an example on the spot. And having the ability to have them predicted by ChatGPT prior to your interview, to me, is incredibly powerful, because then you can actually see, okay, here are some of these questions I might get asked, and then you can actually practice answering them. You can, of course, ask ChatGPT, okay, copy and paste this question, how would you answer it? And they'll give you an example. But it's a really powerful way to predict probably the most challenging questions you're going to get in a job interview. And that's a powerful way to use it, in my opinion.
Okay, great. So it's like, a twofold sort of tool where on the one hand, you can enter in the job description and then ask it to ask the likely questions, or questions that you will be likely asked, so that you don't get surprised by any questions or types of questions when you get to the interview. You've been sort of prepared that you may be asked something like this, and you may be asked something like this. So that's kind of the first half, it seems. And then the second half is like, okay, great. I'm expecting I will be asked something along the lines of this and something along the lines of this. How do I answer? And you can enter. Now, this is where you wouldn't enter in. Would you enter in the job description and say, what would be the best answer to this question? Or would you enter in your resume and say, what would be the best answer to this type of question? Is there a preferred sort of way you would do that, in your opinion?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I would say, first and foremost, the job description for the company is already entered it in, because you entered it in order for it to produce those questions. So it's actually still going to have access to that information.
Okay.
So it'll naturally give you responses based on the information it has already, which is the job description. Now, you could also put your resume in, and you could say, here's my resume, ChatGPT. Could you please answer the above behavioral interview questions using examples that I've included in my resume? You paste it in there, hit enter, and it'll do that. And it'll do that immediately, which is, to me, really interesting. Now, if you're answering behavioral interview questions, not to go too far down a rabbit hole in there, most people know the STAR method. If you don't, it's situation, task, action, result. That is a framework to walk interviewers through a behavioral interview question. A behavioral interview question is a question that starts like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of a time when. And that framework is a really effective way to make sure you're giving them all the details you need to give them in order to answer the question successfully. You could actually ask ChatGPT, could you answer these in according with the STAR method? And it'll do it for you like that way as well. So,
okay, that makes a lot of sense. I forgot to mention, by the way, if you're watching this, get in the comments, get in the chat box, and let us know if you have any questions, or you're struggling with something, or you're wondering about, and we'll be happy to respond to those as they come in. Now, okay, Ben, now here, I want to kick this up to a higher level, a higher plane of existence here. Okay, so now, because you are a recruiter, okay, and this is sort of your 9 to 5, and you've probably, I imagine, heard every answer under the sun to like a lot of different questions. Now, this methodology that you recommend, which I think is pretty good, by the way, namely, you are getting ChatGPT to help you in answering, say, a behavioral question by using the material from your resume, like things like specific accomplishments or duties you've had.
Yeah.
And in the context of the specific job that you applied for, because it understands the job description, you've entered that in. Okay. Now, as a recruiter, okay, the answers that ChatGPT gives you to the methodology you just described, are those kind of what you're wanting to hear? Where, like, for example, someone has on their resume, they say like, oh, I had this accomplishment. I led a team. We were given this challenge. We accomplished the goal, and we did it this way. And then they're asked a behavioral question in the job interview. They say, tell me about a time that you, did something innovative and you led a team and you succeeded. And they pull out this accomplishment. Okay. Now, as the recruiter listening to the answer, is that kind of good enough for you? Or generally speaking, do you want something that goes beyond what was written on the candidate's resume that gives maybe additional insight into their personality or their background or their skill set? What's your kind of general thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is a great question, Bill. And I'm like really glad you asked that, because I think so often the advice will start and end with everything I just said around behavioral interview questions, but I think there's more to it. So what I'm looking for in that very specific circumstance is, and these are things that ChatGPT, by the way, isn't going to help you with. This is things you have to help you with. I want to feel confidence.
Well, maybe
right?
maybe when they add the mind reading component, like they have a, it's a you plug it into the USB and it interface with your brain, then they might be able to do it, right?
Yeah, once Neuralink has ChatGPT as part of its standard factory settings, then absolutely. So then I think you might have it, but I really
that's version 5.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to hear confidence. I want to hear confidence and authenticity, right? When you're telling a story like that, I want to hear confidence, because you're a people leader, right? And part of being a people leader is leading with conviction and confidence, right? So you can have all the right words, but if I don't feel it, if I don't feel like it was authentic and you were confident and you're passionate about it, you're missing out. The other thing that I want is, when at all possible, in any question, but specifically a behavioral interview question, is if you can quantify your impact. I'm always looking for that. What does that mean? That means over the 12 months that I took over and led this team, we were able to improve efficiency by 20%, which led to our company saving $150,000. That is called quantifying your impact. And anytime you're able to do that as a candidate, you allow the hiring manager to imagine what you can do for their team. So those words are great. I think ChatGPT is an amazing starting point to, one, predict the actual questions you will get asked, give you a baseline for how you should answer them within the STAR methodology, but you're going to have to add the seasoning to that. It can give you the base ingredients, but you're going to have to add the seasoning in order to truly be effective when you're answering that question.
So when you answer in everybody pretty much universally recommends the STAR method. So hopefully everybody watching, what the STAR method is, situation, task, action, result. I think everybody's done a video on the STAR method at some point.
Yes.
So you can find out what that is. But in the result component, when you've told your story and you said something like, I was given this challenge, I went and did this, and this is how it turned out. And then right at the end, when you're saying this is how it turned out, these were the results, you would want that quantified in a way that the recruiter could understand. Now, I have always proceeded on the fact that when you list accomplishments, especially at like a management level, you're always going to be quantifying it in one of two ways, either in terms of currency, like money, you saved or money you made, or percentages, either currency or percentages. So if you're in North America, it would be or United States, it would be like dollars or percentage. Those are the two units that you would use to do this. You would say, I improved the efficiency of this operation by 14%, in a year, something like that. Or we saved $43,000 over a period of a quarter, like a 3-month period, something like that. Is that kind of what you're looking for? Or you would look for more, maybe less clinical kind of metrics and things like this to help illustrate?
Honestly, so few candidates consistently quantify their impact. I think either one of those things I'd be thrilled to hear as a recruiter. If you can do, to me, it doesn't sound overly clinical, because there's going to be a story leading up to that. That's just kind of the cherry on top. At the very end, you're quantifying your impact. And I think you should accomplish enough throughout the rest of the answer that at the end, that's just kind of like, and here was the outcome. And I think that's good. I also like to tell people, sometimes throw an L on the end. There we go. For lesson, if you learn something, that's not part of the STAR method, but sometimes I will advocate for that. If there is a takeaway that really did change the way you did things moving forward, you can totally include that there when it seems appropriate. Say, what I really learned from this was that blank, blank, blank. And I think that makes it really feel authentic, which can be hard to do.
I've heard of that.
In an interview.
Yeah. Like I've heard it called Starl, like Star L, where they have like learning or lesson. Yeah. And I think I think it's good for, listen, I'm not on the other side of certainly not on the other side of the table as much as you've been, but it seems like that's the thing to do if you're a candidate and you get asked a very pointed question about maybe a failure or something that didn't go very well. Yeah. So you don't want to end on, well, I failed, I tried this and it didn't work. That's really not a good thing. And it almost seems like I got the impression that in some interviews, some interviewers are pushing for that, for like, let's get the dirt on this person. Let's see if they can, let's find something where they failed and let's get some insight into maybe their limits or, whatever. And so if you end with the learning component, you say, well, okay, we did try this approach and it didn't work. We did not complete it by the deadline. However, what I learned that you can't adopt that approach. It doesn't work. It's always more trouble than it's worth. So in the future, I adopted the opposite approach. And in those cases, it always worked, or something like that. And that I learned that's how you accomplish that goal or whatever it is. So you still end on a positive note. You don't end on this big negative failure thing. Or you could say, if you didn't learn anything, you could say it reinforced my opinion that this is the approach to take, or this is the method to use, or, whatever it is. So you're always ending on a positive, no matter what story you have to take. Even if they ask you like directly, like, tell me about a time, you failed, tell me about a time you did not get the right answer, something like this. Right. That's been what I've been advocating for, based on my own experiences. But I've heard that. I've sort of Star L that's not original to me. That's something I've heard out there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And, I love where you were going with that too, because you will get asked in interviews about times you have not succeeded, because you learn a lot about people in the way they handle failure and the way that they kind of look back on their own failures and their comfortability with talking about it. And throwing a lesson on the end really does show that like you weren't completely deterred by it. I use that as a learning. It's like either you win or you learn. You don't lose, right? You learn. So in that moment, whatever it was didn't work out. You have a way to make it positive at the end. The other thing that I sometimes advocate for, I call it the first 50% rule. And whenever you're asked about something you failed or it didn't go well, you want to be authentic. You want to be honest. You want to find a way to spin it by saying, this is what I learned. But you also want to throw it in the first 50% of your career to put some distance between you today and the you that failed. So if you have a 20-year career and you can make it from year 9 where you had a failure and you could be authentic and vulnerable about it, but still, hey, that was 11 years ago. That's not me now. That's 11-year-old Ben. Like that's 11 years ago. Sorry, I hit my computer. Like that is, to me, I personally love that strategy because
it's a reinforcement. You can just slam your fist down. Well, I agree, because if you ask somebody, like, tell me about a time you did not succeed, or tell me about a time, where you had unanticipated consequences or something. And they tell you a story and they say, yeah, I tried this and it didn't work and I had anticipated consequences and I got in trouble for you. Like, what impression is the interviewer left with? They're left with the impression of someone who can't do that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're communicating.
Yes.
Now, you sort of walked into an ambush a little bit because they directly asked you about it. You didn't volunteer it, but nevertheless, that's the impression you've given, right? So I think it's very important that, when you're asked a question like that, you, one way or another, you give the impression of like, no, I can do this. And like what you just said, putting distance between us, or say, starting off by saying, well, listen, everyone has to start off somewhere. And, many years ago when I first did this, I did this thing, it didn't work out. We got some consequences and, but it taught me that you should do it this way. And that's how I do it. And I've done it many times that way since, and it's turned out well, and we've succeeded, And what impression are you left with then? You're left with the impression, oh, this is someone who can do that thing, right? So even though they were directly asked about, tell me about a time you did this and it failed, you still give the impression that if you were to be hired and you're asked to do that, you would be able to get it right and succeed. And that's, after all, I think that's the goal of every answer you give in a job interview, really, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's a great way of turning that around.
You got to find a way to be positive about questions like this, because it is unavoidable. People are going to ask you, why are you looking to leave your job? Why did you leave that job? They're going to ask you, tell me about your greatest weakness. Tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time you disagreed with a manager. And it's really critical to understand how to navigate these things without coming off as negative. And you need to show them authenticity, but also a certain positivity now that, yeah, that is okay. Like, it's okay that happened because I'm better for it now. And that's not a thing that I currently encounter because I've learned from it. So yeah, those questions are absolutely unavoidable. So you need to learn how to answer them in a way that, won't tank your candidacy.
So this might be an area where, coming back to ChatGPT,
yeah,
you could ask specific questions to ChatGPT. How would you phrase this in a positive way? If I get asked this uncomfortable question that I'm dreading,
yeah,
how would I turn that into a good answer? This kind of thing. Just some scenarios and uses for ChatGPT to help you through some of this process.
Yeah. Yeah. You could absolutely say, hey, ChatGPT, I want to talk about a time I didn't get a project finished on time, and I was a little bit over budget because I failed to do A, B, and C. Could you use that example to craft an answer to what is your greatest weakness? Or tell me about a time you failed. And it'll absolutely spit that out for you. And then you can ask it to modify that and be like, okay, could you make it sound a bit more positive, or
positive outcome. Yeah.
Right. And so ChatGPT is just, the way you can use it. I mean, it is so flexible, and it is, you can just prompt it over and over again until you get a question or an answer where you feel really good about that. And then you can practice it. So it's really powerful. And it's.
Yeah, I agree. It's incredible too. I see there's 27 people here. If you're watching this and you got a question, get in the chat, ask us what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. And we will take questions as we go. Usually we get more questions as we go, but I'm finding this quite fascinating, actually. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back to you. We talked about ChatGPT with LinkedIn profile, ChatGPT with some types of job interview question. Where can we go from here? What else? Is this tool useful for anything else?
Yeah, I think you can use it. You can use it to come up with questions to ask the interviewer. You could say, I'm interviewing for this role for this company that is in this industry. Could you give me some questions to ask the person who's interviewing me at the end of my interview? If they're going to come up with some questions for you, I always think it's important to have some good questions going in there. Ideally, some come up organically from your interaction, and you can ask them questions that are relevant to the discussion you've had. But you also want to bring questions with you that you can ask, because if you don't ask questions at the end of your interview, they're going to assume one or two things. You didn't prioritize preparing for this interview with me, or it's not a priority to you, or both. So you want to make sure you're bringing great questions. And if you don't have any, ChatGPT can help you craft specific ones for the industry and role. So I think that's good. One of the questions I always like to ask is, what made you choose this company? Or why do you stay with this company? Depending if they've been there for a long time or not a long time. And you can use ChatGPT post-interview to help you write a thank you email. I know some people think a thank you email is superfluous. They have no place. I always write a thank you email. And I always tell people that you should write a thank you email, because I have never heard of a person get it rejected because they wrote a thank you email. I have, however, heard of people furthering their relationship with a hiring manager because they took the time to write a well-written thank you email. And ChatGPT can help you. One of the reasons I like to ask that question is because a good thank you email will include something from the interview. So for example, you might say something along the lines of, "Hey, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciated you meeting with me. One of the things that really stood out to me was you mentioned A, B, and C, and it further motivated me to pursue this opportunity with the organization, etc." But
I agree.
you can basically prompt ChatGPT to write you a thank you email for the job and specifically highlight that thing they said when they said, "Why did you choose to come to this company?" And they said blank. You can actually prompt ChatGPT to write you a thank you email, talk about the specific thing that really motivated you in the interview and incorporate it. And it's just a nice thing to send over to them.
There's so much great
you
stuff.
You could use it post-interview, I think, too.
Yeah, like I've always maintained, I mean, you could tell me what you think of this, but the thank you email is more of a liability if you don't do it, right? Like if you just send a token kind of thank you email, that kind of covers your base. Now, as you said, if you really put some time into it and, customize it, throw them a compliment, say something like, "I really appreciated the fact that you guys at the interview took the time to like do this, or, offer me coffee or make me comfortable or ask me about this, or, whatever it was, I think that will, you can only benefit from that. You've got nothing to lose. But if you don't send a thank you email, it can be a liability because perhaps every other candidate sent one and you're the only one that didn't. You don't want to stand out perhaps in that way. What you said before that, I thought was super fascinating, where you were talking about, I think you were still talking about the thank you email, but you were talking about ChatGPT writing it for you. And you were saying, can you write me a thank you email that will do this? And I like the fact, I think it's an incredibly useful feature where ChatGPT, you can give it directions. You could say, "I want you to emphasize this," or "I want you to write it in such a way that it has this effect." I think that's incredibly powerful because just saying, "I want you to write me a thank you email." Yes, it can do that. But if you say, "I want you to write me a thank you email that endears me to them or makes them feel that I'm very enthusiastic about this job specifically," or something like that, I think that can, at least if it's done well, it can have a very good effect. Have you used ChatGPT like that? And if you have, like, what do you think of its ability to do that kind of thing? I have sort of had mixed results with it.
Yeah, so I've never written a thank you email for it because I haven't interviewed and I've been with my current company for like 8.5 years and, be happy. But
giving it that specific direction,
I have used it. Yeah, I have done that. I have asked it to do, so I've had to write up prompts like nominating people for certain awards. And I have said, add some comedy to this, like, add it, like write it, but make it, with a bit of humor. Or, write this, as if I feel really passionate about the way a person has done blank or whatever. And you can absolutely do that. I've done it, and I think it's quite responsive. The magic in ChatGPT is the prompts. You just have to keep prompting it. If you don't like the original thing it spits out, prompt it to modify it, change it a little bit. It does that quite well. I agree. Powerful.
I agree. That's where the power is. So I want to make sure that people who are watching this, if you are, you're kind of like me, you're not like a super aficionado of ChatGPT, but you've used it a bit. Make sure that you're doing that. You're not just saying like, "Do this for me," and that's it. Then you just copy the text and use it. You get a version and then you say, well, punch up the enthusiasm a little bit, or write it in a slightly more formal way, but have like a very warm sort of conclusion or personable kind of, something like this where you're tailoring it, you're focusing on the result that it's trying to give you, or the reaction it's designed to have, something like that. So it's almost like a multi-dimensional kind of tailoring of what you're asking it to do.
That could seem more intimidating than it is too. Like I would say if this is intriguing to you, right? If you're watching this right now and you are intrigued, but you have no experience with ChatGPT, you've got some homework. Here's your homework. What I want you to do is log in and create an account. It takes no time and it's free. But then I just want you to play around with the prompts. You might say, write a birthday message to my husband or wife, okay? And press enter. ChatGPT will do that. Then I want you just to play around the prompts. Say, okay, include a little bit about our memory of our trip to Paris last year. Then say, add some more emotion to this and just prompt it and play around with it for like 5 minutes, because at the end of that 5 minutes, I guarantee you will feel far more comfortable than you feel right now listening to us talk about how you can use ChatGPT. It is so user-friendly, but just like anything, it takes a little bit of practice. So if you've never used it, there's your homework. So finish watching this. Then maybe, like you mentioned, Bill, maybe go check out my channel. After that, then go to ChatGPT and write that letter to your husband or wife and play around and prompt around with it.
Write it to your husband and to your wife and talk about the trip
to both
to Paris, all three of you, that you had all those memories. Yes, that's right.
Very French.
Yeah. There we go. Oh man, I'm just recovering for a slight illness. Excuse me. No, fascinating stuff. Yeah, like some people out there obviously are super into ChatGPT and AI, and they're using all the latest AI tools. Some people, they may have heard of it, but they haven't really investigated it. I absolutely concur with what Ben has said. If you have never used it, or you keep hearing about it, but you haven't quite really investigated it, take this opportunity to do it. It's probably the single biggest tool that there is available right now to help you. And it helps you with pretty much almost everything. It'll help you even like work on even things like public speaking or interviewing. Like it can give you tips and it can give you pointers and, things like this. You can ask it questions, very specific questions for, what's not really working and, maybe some tips of how to work on that specific thing. Just incredibly useful tool. It's still not the be all end all, but it is the most incredibly useful tool we've had in the last 10 years. Easy. So I want to
That's a good point. It's not the be all end all, Bill. Like if you go and you do exactly what you and I talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Put the job description in ChatGPT, ask it for behavioral interview questions. And then you look at that and you go, okay, that's what they're going to do. That's not going to get it done. You still need to practice. You still need to do your research on the organization. It is a tool. It's like a really exciting, highly effective, incredibly innovative new tool, but you're going to have to use it effectively and do the homework yourself too.
Yeah, exactly. Like knowing, like what you said about knowing how to refine the results it's giving you, what prompts to tell it, it can give you a sort of generic kind of thing, but then the power is in being able to tailor that by further refining, like basically telling it that's good, but do it more like this, or that's good. Make it shorter, make it longer, punch this up, de-emphasize this, make it more formal or less formal, and through that tailoring customization process, you get something that's incredibly good at a fraction of the amount of effort and time that it would have normally taken you to do it. And you as a job candidate are competing against people who are using this tool. So that alone, I think, is the impetus for a lot of people to just take the plunge and use it if you haven't done it before. That's what I want to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so competitive. Like when you're talking about like great jobs and you're talking about like your dream job, and the people who are going to be interviewing against you are going to be qualified. They're going to be qualified like you. So where do you differentiate? Well, you can differentiate if you have a relationship with someone who works at the company and you can get referred in, right? That's a great differentiation. But if you don't have that, and it's purely based on the preparation and the work you've done and the impression that you're going to make in the interview, I almost feel like it's a bit irresponsible to not at least explore it and try, because you can look at a job description and be like, okay, here's where I'm strong, looking at the must-haves, looking at the day-to-day responsibilities. Here's where I'm not strong, and you can prepare to speak to those alignment and misalignments. That's incredibly important. But if you can get like a jump on the questions they are going to ask you and the most challenging questions they're going to ask you, it behooves you to do that. If you know those ahead of time, like there's no way you're not going to be a more effective version of yourself if you know that ahead of time. And the tools are now there. You get a pretty good idea of what they're going to ask you. So it's just, in my opinion, it's almost irresponsible to not at least do it and use it as a part of preparation.
Now here's something that personally I'm interested in. Okay. Now, it's the game of cat and mouse between, you've got the two sides of the table. You got the candidate that's trying to make them appear as the number one candidate, the default choice for the job, regardless of what the reality is. Their incentive is to try and make themselves look as good as possible. The person on the other side of the table, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, one of their priorities obviously is to try and cut through some of the dog and pony show, the smoke and mirrors, and try and get to an actual assessment of who the candidate is, what their capabilities are, and are they suitable for the role, right? Now, this is where it gets a little bit sometimes awkward, because however effective the candidate's preparation is, and that's what we're here talking about, a preparation for a job interview, and whatever tools are at their disposal, there's always going to be an attempt on the other side of the table to sort of see through that, right? To sort of outmaneuver it. And to illustrate, I remember when ChatGPT first came in, and it was the tail end of, me being in academia. I was doing some teaching on the side, and I actually really enjoyed this. I observed the educational system panic, like absolutely panic over this thing when it came in, because it's so powerful and so useful. You assign, homework or whatever to students. Students go home, and instead of just stealing something off the internet or copying an answer, they just get ChatGPT to create them, to answer the questions for them. So it does their homework for them. It does their assignment. So it was introduced into this sort of system that was not designed with ChatGPT in mind. So the reaction from the educational system, as far as I, observed, was absolute panic, and they didn't know what to do. And their immediate knee-jerk reaction was to ban it. No one's allowed to use it, which of course didn't work. But then they would try and outmaneuver it by saying, okay, instead of assigning you homework to test your knowledge on a subject, we're going to get you to do an in-class presentation where you answer the questions standing in front of a class. You have no access to a phone or anything in real time. And that will be a way we can outmaneuver this tool, this crutch you're using, to artificially sort of give the impression that you're better than you are. Now, coming back to a job interview, okay, if every candidate is using ChatGPT to anticipate all the questions, all types of questions, to tailor perfect answers to all the questions and optimize everything, use all the keywords and all the stuff that, an interviewer might be looking for. What is the strategy to now combat that? And you still have to pick out one out of, say, 6 or however many people you're interviewing. You still have to find a way of differentiating between these candidates. Now, what's your take on some of this, Ben?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say, I imagine that was incredibly entertaining to watch, especially if you're like if you're moving away from being in academia, that would probably be like, oh, well, have fun with that. But
it was a little, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine. And I would say this, like students who have to write a paper, I would say the average student is far more likely to leverage the tool to find shortcuts than an interviewer might be to truly deeply prepare. So in terms of adoption as a solution, I would imagine that it would be, I would imagine it would be much less widely adopted. So first and foremost, like, I don't think every candidate is going to do this. I've been interviewing people for 15 years, and people come to interviews unprepared. And it is shocking because it takes time. It could be a huge decision, like it make a massive impact in your life, and people show up unprepared. So I think there is a massive delta between candidates who are prepared and unprepared. So I think it will just be less of a concern overall, because I don't think every single candidate would do it. I also imagine companies will need to pivot. So they'll probably do more assessments, right? Using predictive index.
I just want to say, and that illustrates that there's still a window of opportunity for people to gain an advantage by using this tool now, because it's not universally being used by all candidates. So I think that's what that says too, right?
100%. I mean, there's an opportunity just to be a candidate who comes in well prepared in general, but being a candidate who uses the latest and greatest from a technology standpoint to truly elevate themselves, there might be a window for a while. Because I can't imagine just being in this space and interviewing, candidates who are unprepared for interviews, late to interviews, all that kind of stuff. Like, I just can't imagine tomorrow every candidate's going to be a rock star and they're just going to nail the interview. I think there's things ChatGPT can't do for you. It can't actually have results for you to speak on, right? So we were talking about quantifying your impact earlier. ChatGPT can't make an achievement for you 4 years ago. Like, if you're an amazing candidate who has actually done things that move the needle for organizations, it can help you craft that story. It can't make that story a reality for you. You have to have that. But if, let's just say hypothetically, right? Let's just play the game. More candidates come in, they're more well-prepared. I think you will see organizations do more assessments, predictive index, Myers-Briggs, like all these different assessments they can use. I think you'll see maybe an over-reliance on some of that, because that's something that maybe they can't ChatGPT their way out of.
Do they still, you brought up Myers-Briggs. Do they still use Myers-Briggs, like, predominantly?
I think it depends. I think there's a ton of them out there. So I've worked with a lot of organizations that use predictive index. I think that one's really popular. I think there's Enneagram. I mean, there's a ton of them. And I think they are increasing in popularity. Candidates hate them. Like, a lot of candidates do not like doing them. They go, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't need to take a test to show I can do the job. Well, if you want this job, you have to, because it's part of the interview process. So I do see it. I think the data shows that more companies are engaging a variety of different testing mechanisms to test candidates, to get more data. So I think you will see more of that. I think more companies will adopt that if that was the case. I think anything they can get people to actually demonstrate on the job skills, you'll see a move towards that, just like you saw in the classroom. Like, hey, there's a way to test that. Presentations, coding assessments, different exercises. I think you would see that more. I think that's
I hate to say it, but you brought up a great point. Like, if you're a candidate, you got to leave your ego at the door a lot of times. And that's going to be increasingly the case as we go into the future, because they'll require you to take all these psychometrics and various aptitude tests and things like this. And if you're quite understandably a little offended by that, saying like, look, I got 20 years doing this job, what, you don't believe me that I can do it or something? You have to verify that I can do it. It seems like a colossal waste of time and a bit of a slap in the face, but unfortunately this is kind of the general trend. And I think it's born out of perhaps something from something that the educational system has kind of done. This is kind of a reaction towards it. We're going to verify, but also from tools like ChatGPT, we're going to verify what you have. It's not a shot at you that we don't trust you, or that, we don't value this experience that you have. It's just that because of the rise of a lot of these tools and a lot of certain other things, we want verification of it. So if you're a candidate, leave your ego at the door, unfortunately, I regret to say, and just do these tests, and then you have access to the opportunities.
Yeah. I would be absolutely remiss if we left this conversation, Bill, without me saying, like, you need to proofread whatever you get from ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that I have seen, I actually had someone send me a thank you email from an interview I was conducting for my team. I was hiring another person for like a new area of the country for my team. We were expanding, and I got a thank you email that was clearly a ChatGPT. This is funny because I just said, like, I'm just talking about how you can use it for this, but there was like a clear point in the email where I was like, a human didn't write this. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Just because ChatGPT is like wonderful doesn't mean you shouldn't proofread it before you hit send. Like, do yourself a favor and just make sure you feel good about it. Proofread it, read it out loud. Don't just read it in your head, but actually read it out loud. It's a better way to catch grammatical errors or mistakes. I would definitely do that.
I mean, I understand why people don't. I believe I understand why they don't, because, you know, you just say, write me this, and then poof, it does it. And, you know, that's incredibly efficient, incredibly wonderful. You just want to copy it, paste it, and bam, there you go, send, you know, or whatever, you know, because that's incredibly efficient and incredibly wonderful. But when you tack on the proofreading, now you took something that took 5 seconds into something now that takes 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like it's much,
Yeah.
It's more of a step where it, like, now something that's 5 seconds now takes 5 minutes. It's not just like a little token extra task at the end. This is actually amplifying the amount of effort by like many times, right? It's a multiple.
Yeah.
So I understand why people maybe aren't, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I've seen some stuff that's not only the grammar is bad or it's incomprehensible, it's just talking about something unrelated for, like, you know, a second or two, or something inappropriate or something straight, like, you know, it totally tips you off that this is AI doing it, and that negates the entire advantage of using this, because I think people get insulted. You know, you pawned me off with a AI response, or, you know, I think there's a negative reaction when people realize that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not even just like it negates it. Like that could tank your candidacy. Like it just
Yeah.
makes the whole thing feel so disingenuous. And you'd be like, well, okay. Well, so yeah, it is an investment of time, but it's worth it. It's like a worthwhile investment of time.
Yeah. I think that the reason to use it is not the time saving element. It's the fact that, like what you said at the beginning of this stream with reference to LinkedIn, and how, like, it knows trends, it knows keywords, it knows what recruiters in general are looking for. Like, you're capitalizing on that knowledge it's bringing to its content creation, not simply the fact that it can create something for you in like a few seconds. It's the fact that it's bringing that in, and, you know, it can incorporate things into the content it's creating. That's the reason to use it, not simply the fact that it's faster. And when you think of it that way, then proofreading makes much more sense. You know, it's just something that you would easily come to terms with.
Yeah. And you'll probably still save time, just not as much. You just have to put in a little bit more time to proofread. Like, but I couldn't agree more. It's, you know, it's a, but every tool has guardrails, you know.
Of course, it's a tool. It's not the be all end all. It doesn't, like, there's a principle in business they've been teaching for forever, where, you know, you can outsource different functions, but you should never outsource your thinking, you know, your strategy or your strategic direction. You know, you can get advice and things, but at the end of the day, you have to retain that. And something like ChatGPT, it brings up that issue. It's like, should I just let ChatGPT handle everything? It does everything for me automatically. It decides what to say. It creates it. You know, should I just leave it all up to ChatGPT? I would say no. The conventional wisdom is like, you know, whatever it creates, you're still the editor. You're still the person that has to approve everything and has to read everything, because it is not quite ready to just like, sort of, you turn off your brain and you let it decide what's to be done and do it. Right. We're not quite at that level yet, if we ever get there. But that's how I think people should look at it.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
You know, it's automating the things in your life that you can automate, but not automating the things in life that you care about or you want to be doing, or the things that are important that you have some oversight. I think, you know, deciding how to use a tool is incredibly important.
Yeah, great. I agree. I think that we covered today all the key points. So, like, how to create questions, how to answer questions, how to tailor your LinkedIn profile, and what I think is the especially interesting reason for area for me is like these sort of countermeasures against it. Now, just as a conclusion, I want to just revisit that for a second. Now, when I asked you about this maybe 10 minutes ago, what I heard was there's not a ton of countermeasures to ChatGPT helping you in a job interview, for the simple reason that we're not at the point yet where every candidate is using ChatGPT. So there's not a lot of like specific things that interviewers are doing that are designed to detect and counter the fact that you've used ChatGPT to help you, right? Is that kind of a proper understanding of that? Nope.
I would say yes. Oh, do we have me? Yeah, I was going to say
Yep.
yes. And funny enough, Bill, like almost a swing to the opposite side of it. The fact that recruiters are discovering ChatGPT for the first times mean they're actually using ChatGPT to come up with some of the questions they're going to ask you. So they might be doing the same thing as you, which gives you an advantage and actually makes these methods more effective. Recruiters will look at a job description and be like, oh, give me 10 behavioral interview questions based on the must-haves. And if you're doing the exact same thing. So I think for right now, not only are there not countermeasures and there's not counter moves, you're actually reaching a point where these techniques might be hyper effective because everybody is so new to the tool.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. As always, though, at the end of the day, when you're in a job interview, a lot of what the outcome is depends on things like your communication skills, your body language, how professionally you present yourself, how well you understand etiquette, protocol, that kind of thing. And these are things that are separate from maybe the words you say. So if you're using a tool like ChatGPT to prepare you for an interview and helping you to to say the right thing, to get the right content, a big component is always going to be, not what you say, but everything else in the interview process. They're wanting to feel you out. They're basically wanting to understand if you're the type of person they would want to work with. So if you were behaving the way you're behaving in the job interview, and that's how you behave in the office or something, or in the workplace around them, would they like that? Would you be the person they would pick, right? And so although ChatGPT is an incredibly useful tool to help you come up with the content of what you say and how you answer questions, everyone needs to keep in mind that a job interview isn't just the responses you give. It's all those other people skills and that kind of thing. So your grooming, your attire, like there's all kinds of other dimensions there. So it can help you with that one area, but make sure you're not weak in those other areas too. I think that's something we need to mention, because we've been singing this thing praises for an hour and talking about how it's like, the second coming. It's like, it is a great, great tool, and it's a great boon for a lot of people. But don't forget that. Don't have a blind spot about all the other stuff that's required, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you do an interview and you say all the perfect words, but they reach the conclusion that they don't think you'd be the type of person they would want to work with, or you would mesh well with a team, everything's for naught. Like, so many things, there are so many factors, and this is just helping you with one of the factors. But yeah, I couldn't agree more, Bill. Everything you said, spot on.
One question for you, because as I said, admittedly, I'm not like the biggest expert on AI. There's a whole universe of AI tools out there, as I understand. A lot of things that involve graphics and things like that. Have we got to the point? Do you know, Ben? Have we got to the point where, your computer has a camera, and we have AI, and AI understands graphics? Can it say, look at the expression on your face, and tell you, like, no, you should smile more, or when you're giving this answer? And do like that sort of coaching? Are we there yet? Have you heard of any paid tools or anything like that? Or that's still not really here yet?
You know what? I haven't heard of them, but would it surprise me if it was already out, or if it was about to be? Not at all. I mean, because there's tools like Gong, which can like basically like record a meeting and like provide context. Like, here's exactly what happened, who said what. I mean, like, so it might be there. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, Canva has an AI element now where it can actually create Mid-Journey-esque images. I mean, it's so powerful, and like there's just constant new technology. So I'm not aware of one that specifically provides that type of coaching, but if you told me it exists, like I would probably be more surprised if one didn't exist or wasn't close to being here, just based on what I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, I think ChatGPT also does, like if you get I'm given to understand that if
Yeah.
you get the paid version, which I don't have, it
Yeah.
has more of like some graphic tools, like it can generate images and things like this. So have you ever had a chance to use some of those more
Yep.
advanced features? Yeah. Is there anything else in there that would be of interest to candidates preparing for a job
So
interview?
I haven't,
Not yet.
I have used like Canva's AI. I've used an AI tool from a YouTube tool that I have. It's vidIQ. They have like a
Okay.
visual. So I've used their visuals. I have not used a ChatGPT one, but I do have like several members of my team who like pay the $20 a month to get the souped up version of it, and they've made tons of images that are awesome and hilarious and super neat.
Okay. Awesome. Right on. Well, listen, Ben, it's been great. This is the first time we're doing this, and I think this is awesome. I hope that we will have the chance of doing another one of these in the near future. Hopefully, we'll be able to swing that. Um, and we haven't had any questions. I can't believe this. We haven't had any comments, any questions today. I think this is the first live stream I've done in like 5 years. I've had like no questions or comments. That's really interesting. We've got 24 people here right now, but we haven't had a shortage of stuff to talk about, so I guess that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, as always, if you're watching this and you have any suggestions for topics for us to cover or specific questions about something you're wondering about or you're struggling with or you're grappling with and you're looking for some direction, we're taking suggestions for topics to cover in this, as well as always, answering questions in real time whenever we do this. So this live stream occurs weekly at this time every Monday. So come back next week. And the goal is to get a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different people that work with candidates, work with whether hiring managers, recruiters, people that are involved, because a lot of these questions, as I'm sure Ben will probably back me up on, there isn't a one size fits all answer. It depends what industry you're in, what level you're at, what country you're in, like, and all this. And that's why it's good to get different perspectives on different topics. And I hope we'll be able to get even more people to participate in the future. Not to talk forever or anything, but just one final thing. If you have any specific suggestions for guests to have on this channel or collaborations to do, please let me know, and I will take that into consideration. So thanks very much, Ben. It was a pleasure talking to you. I think this went really, really well. I'd like to do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I agree. I mean, the time flew by. I think there's so many things we could have talked about too, that like branched off from the different things. So I really enjoyed it. Happy to be back. And, I hope your audience got some great value.
Yeah. And check out, if you're watching this, check out Ben's channel. Once again, it's called Ben Talks Talent, Interview Advice. And there is a link to it in the description box under this live stream, so you can access that. And as I said at the very beginning, Ben has some great videos on the perspective of the recruiter on the other side of the table. So if you are a job seeker and you are applying for jobs and you're going to interviews and you're wondering about what is the recruiter doing, how are they making decisions, what's their perspective on different resumes or different answers to questions or different things that happen in the process, Ben has done a lot of great videos covering a lot of the topics, including, I believe, a couple of videos that are on how to interpret the recruiter's response to different things to see what it signals, whether you're the lead candidate or whether you're kind of out of the running, or, things that a lot of job seekers want to know. They want to know how to interpret what's going on your side of the table. So check out Ben's channel. And I will be back next week, and hopefully Ben will be back too in the near future. Okay, thanks everyone. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. And thanks to Ben. See you, Ben.
Yep. See ya.